The Atlantic tropics are getting more active. Good evening, good Wednesday evening to you. I'm Mike Naso here with a video update on the tropics. We have some activity out there. Here's the satellite imagery of the Atlantic, and we have three features we're watching. The first is Peter, which is very, very weak. It was a tropical storm starting to dissipate way up here to the north of Puerto Rico. Then we have Rose, which is barely discernible on this satellite. That's weakening as well. And then we have a feature up here that could take on subtropical characteristics as it loops around in the North Atlantic. But most importantly, and what we're going to focus most on, is a brand new tropical depression right there in blue in the Central Atlantic. Looks better than all of them. And this could be a tropical storm and is forecast to be a major hurricane in about 4 or 5 days just to the northeast of the Lesser Antilles of the Caribbean. And it is too soon to tell whether or not this system will impact land. Here's the latest on our Tropical Depression 18 as of 5 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. We could see it become a tropical storm at 11, but as of 5, it was still a depression. It's at 10.1 north, 33.9 west, so it's far out there in the eastern Atlantic. It's moving straight west at 15, 35 mile an hour winds, forecast to become a tropical storm later tonight or tomorrow, then a hurricane by Saturday, and then a major hurricane by Monday. But you could see in 5 days, it's still to the northeast of the Lesser Antilles, moving off in a northwesterly direction. It's not going to move extremely fast. This won't be one that in 5 days is all the way over here near Mexico. This is going to take its time, and it should be able to intensify. We think it'll be a strong hurricane, at least a Category 3, if not stronger, like Larry was. But unlike Larry, which took a track more like that, this one could come much further to the west in the long run. Whether or not that's further south or whether or not that's further north, we just can't tell at this point. As far as the environment, look at this very favorable wind shear out ahead of it. It has a little bit of a drier environment. It's going to stay a small system, I think, but nevertheless, very low wind shear in contrast to Peter over here, which is just getting slaughtered by wind shear, as well as Rose up here, and that's why those systems have weakened. But this one should have a good environment all the way towards the Caribbean islands, and that is cause for concern. Here's the spaghetti model plots, and you can see they generally want to take the system west, then west-northwest, then northwest, and some of them want to turn it out to sea very quickly. Others want to continue it closer to Puerto Rico and the Northern Islands and even the Bahamas. We're going to keep an eye and see how that progresses. There's a little bit of a discrepancy between the models. This is the European model, and you can see it makes the system a very powerful hurricane just north of the islands and then starts to turn into a weakness of the ridge of high pressure. So it turns right around the western periphery of the high. Weakness opens up, that little slot in the system turns out, and then you can see another wave behind it develops and heads towards the Caribbean islands. Now this is the Canadian model, which is a little bit more troubling. This takes it much further to the west. You can see it has our system impinging on the northern islands, and then it eventually starts to turn, but not until it gets towards the Bahamas. And so that would be a much more serious threat. You can definitely see this trophiness here, its fall, and so it gets captured here, but we don't want it to get too close because that's well to the west of Bermuda out here and not that far from Cape Hatteras and the Bahamas. So again, that's the Canadian model. We're going to watch all of these. Right now it's obviously still in the formative stages, but you can see it's a little thing. It's got that little shape to it, convection blowing up over the center, so it should be a tropical storm in the next 12 to 18 hours, probably sooner than that. Maybe by the time 11 tonight comes, they might keep it a depression, they might give it a name, but it will organize and strengthen. Now, the discrepancies I was talking about, this is the GFS 12Z ensembles, and you can see a lot of them turn the system out, make it a strong hurricane, but kind of turn it like Larry, right out here towards Bermuda, maybe a little to the west of Bermuda. The European models are much more troubling. They take the system much further west, more in the direction of Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, and far to the southwest of the island of Bermuda. So there's a bit of a difference between a major hurricane leaving out here headed this way and a major hurricane down here headed this way. Big difference. And so it's still too early to say for sure that this thing's going to turn out to sea. I really don't know at this point, but something generally like this should be expected. And so if you are in the northern Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, Bermuda, and the East Coast, you guys need to keep an eye. It's still September. It is still hurricane season. So here's the ensembles, and you can see what they do. They take this system right on up in this general direction somewhere. They can't decide, but in about, 180, 240 hours. So again, we don't know if we're going to have a system moving safely out to sea or something much closer to land. We don't know if we're going to have a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane or a 140-mile-an-hour hurricane, but it looks like we're going to have a powerful hurricane. And don't forget the wave behind it. Watch this thing spit off Africa, and see that? Something's coming behind. So we could still deal with another system off Africa after this one. So we're just going to keep an eye on all of this. Then there's Peter. Peter has petered out. It's a tropical depression, 21.7 north, 66.7 west, and winds 35. Peter is the same strength as our new depression, but that one's headed up. This is headed down, expected to dissipate way out here in the Bermuda Triangle and not be a problem for anybody. And then we have Rose, and Rose is also a tropical depression, 35 miles an hour at 24.2, 40.2, way out there. Rose is going to snake around here south of the Azores and won't be a problem anymore. So we got rid of Peter and Rose, but you can see on the satellite there ain't much left of Peter there. Rose is naked. Look at that. Entirely naked out there in the Atlantic. Rose exposed and weakening, and Peter exposed and weakening, although there's more storminess on the eastern side of Peter. Look at this wind shear blowing directly into it, just ripping him apart. In contrast, we have this curlicue down here developing, and that's likely to become a tropical storm later tonight or in the morning. By the way, the name list. This name list, we rotate the 6 name lists ever since 1979. We alternate male, female, unless the storm's name is retired. We used this in 79, 85, 91, 97 when I was a kid, 03 when I was a teenager, and then again in 09 and 2015. The furthest we ever made it was Peter back in 03. We never had a Rose until this year, and she didn't amount to much, but the next name for this new system would be Sam. We've never had a storm named Sam, and this, if and when it does become Sam, is expected to be a powerful major hurricane. And then we've only got 3 names left on our list: Teresa, Victor, and Wanda. And then we got to go to a whole new name list. By the way, they're not doing the Greek alphabet anymore because that was just a nightmare. We had Hurricane Iota and Hurricane Delta and Hurricane Zeta and Hurricane Beta, and it was just, people were like, what the heck's going on? So there's an alternative list of names, and I'll tell you about those next time. But that'll do it for the tropics. I'm Mike Nasel with an update. Peter, pretty much gone. Rose, totally naked. But this new system could become Sam and is forecast to become a dangerous major hurricane and approach the extreme northeastern Leeward Islands. We're going to keep a close eye on it just in case it gets closer to land than we think. I'll talk to you guys next time.